Good morning, guys. I know I look crazy as hell, okay? Don't judge me. Y'all know how it is when y'all have a newborn and a toddler. Y'all have sleepless nights and you ain't got time to be trying to do all the extra stuff. So don't judge what I look like. But anywho, as y'all know, I did the DNA test with Ancestry.com. No, this is not a sponsored video, but I wanted to know more about my history, my bloodline, where I came from, etc., because I have a relative that did a book on my family history and all about like my grandfather, my grandfather's parents, blah 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 blah, the plantation that he was born on, etc. So I wanted to look a little bit deeper, and he wanted me to do the DNA test to just see, you know, more about the family history and all of that extra stuff. So if you guys want to know about my DNA test results, then keep watching. Okay, so first things first, I want to go ahead and say that I know that on my grandfather's side, which was the African side of my family, the ancestry goes all the way back to Sierra Leone. That is where my bloodline originated from, and we were part of the Timni tribe. I don't know if the DNA test results will actually show that, but I did want to go ahead and say that I knew that part of it. I don't know how much African I have, all that other stuff, but I do know that my grandmother was a red bone, and her side of the family is, I don't know exactly where they're from, but I know that there's Indian. I'm not going to say that there's Native American Indian, but there's some kind of Indian in my bloodline because of my grandmother. When I say my grandmother was a red bone, y'all see how light I am, right? My grandmother, she could pass as a white lady with red hair. Literally, that's what she looked like. My grandfather, on the other hand, was super dark skinned. You could tell his bloodline was African because he was dark. But I got my phone. Let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so let's pull up the Ancestry DNA test results. I've had them for a couple of months, but I'm just now getting around to actually seeing them. So it says I have 12 ethnicity regions and 2 genetic communities. Oh wow, that's pretty cool. Okay, so it says that I am 86% African, and that breaks down to 37% Cameroon, Congo, 36% Ivory Coast, Ghana, 10% Senegal. Wow. 1% African Southeastern Bantu, 1% Benin and Togo, and less than 1% Africa North. Now, I have watched other people's DNA test results, and most people are, you know, they're like 80% African, 70% African, etc. Mine is actually pretty high, especially considering how light skinned I am. Just saying. But most people I see like Nigeria or Ghana, but mine, the highest percentage is Cameroon, Congo. Now, reading the book that my family did on my bloodline, we came from Sierra Leone, and I don't remember exactly which relative it was, but there were like 3 relatives that were actually caught and sent to a different part of Africa, because, you know, in Africa they were actually catching Africans and selling them, basically. So I had some relatives that were in Sierra Leone that were actually moved to the western side of Africa, because, you know, if you guys know anything about, like, you know, the trade and all that other stuff, they were trading on the western side. So they were caught and they were sent to the west side. Now, I do know from reading the book and my cousin's history that it was Cameroon and Ghana were the two main trading posts in Africa for Africans coming to America. So let's look a little bit further. Okay, it says I am 12% European. Okay, so that makes sense as to my grandmother's side. Now, I have never met my grandfather. I have never met my dad's dad. I believe he died way before I was born. But I met my dad's mom at my brother-in-law's funeral, and she was really fair-skinned like my grandmother on my mother's side. She was actually a red bone as well, but she had like a sandy brown hair. My mother's mother had red hair. Now, I've only seen pictures of my grandmother because she passed away a year before I was born. Okay, so 12% European, and it breaks down as 7% Scandinavian, 3% Great Britain, 1% Italy/Greece, and less than 1% Europe East. That makes a lot of sense because, if I'm not mistaken, the Scandinavians are the ones that have the reddish, brownish hair. And they do have some Indian, depending on what kind. I don't know what kind. And then it says less than 1% Asia South and less than 1% Middle East, West Asia. So that's actually pretty interesting. I can't believe I'm 86% African though. Like, if you look at me, you would not think that I was 86% African, would you? Because when I look at myself, I'm like, ooh, child, I know I'm mixed with something. And it ain't very much African. Because most of the people that I know that, or most of the people that I have watched that have 86% African or more, well, better yet, 80% African or more, are a lot darker than I am. I guess I was the luck of the draw. Or either my grandmother's genes are real strong. Because like I said, my grandmother was light skinned, like super light skinned. And my grandfather was the dark skinned that when you looked at him, you knew he was African. So I have like a family tree that dates back to like the 1700s, I believe, or the 1600s, something like that. But it actually breaks down like, okay, this was that parent. Like, okay, so he actually knows, okay, Sierra Leone, then they went from Sierra Leone to Cameroon, and then from Cameroon they went to Ghana, and from Ghana then they went to Great Britain, and then from Great Britain then they came to America. That's how they were traded from Africa to America. I know that. And I know how, once they got to America, the trail that they took to get to the plantation that the owner took. I know that there was one cousin, and I cannot remember her name for the life of me right now, but she was one of the first American slaves of my bloodline to come from Great Britain to America. And how that all populated, how she had kids, they had kids, and they had kids. Y'all understand the whole tree. But it actually is a tree, and it starts from her and goes down and spreads out and spreads out and spreads out, and it tells you like, okay, this many kids. Okay, so I had to take an intermission real quick because baby girl woke up. I had to go get my little princess. But I know like my family tree of like different names. Now there are some names that are missing, but for the most part I know like names, dates that they were born, dates that they died, because with having that plantation you have public records, and with the public records, because that owner never sold any slaves, he was actually able to get a log of like all the slaves that he had, and you know what their jobs were, you know who was a butler, who was a cook, who was this and who was that, all of that different stuff. And it was all handwritten. Like when I tell y'all I was amazed to find all of this stuff, I was amazed. So I'm gonna try to do like some digging on his side of the family to learn, because me and my father, we never really had the best relationship. But now that I'm grown, I have my own babies and this, that, and the third, I want to be able to hand this down to them, because I never really cared about my DNA test results or where my family came from. It never really dawned on me until I had my son. And once I had him, I was like, I need to really start looking into this, because, you know, when he gets older, he might want to ask questions about where, you know, the family is from. Those are my DNA test results. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button at the top. Leave your comments and your questions down below, and I will check you guys in the next video. Bye. This is about to be the nastiest thing ever, because I basically have to fill this thing up to where my top finger is. Don't judge the way my nails look, okay? But I gotta fill this thing up with that much spit, and I'm like, okay.